Hi everyone, and welcome back to Friendly Tech Chats. Today we're talking about collaborative programming. Pair programming versus code reviews, pair programming and code reviews, and the whole shebang, because there's been some discussion online.
Yes, and it's a very important topic always. How
Definitely.
to work in a team, how to deliver the code together.
What do you think is the best approach to collaborative programming?
I don't think there is a simple best approach that fits everyone and everything. I think
Are you just saying it depends?
it kind of depends. It also depends on the type of a project, of the phase, of the people who are working there, their preferences, their way of working, their styles. But we can say that there is a set of best practices, even though usually we don't like to call things best practices, but they are best practices and they can work together. Pair programming, mob, or sometimes it's called ensemble programming, and code reviews, pull requests, merge requests, and so on. In the ideal situation, I would use both, or all of those. It might be slightly different ratio depending again on the situation. In some teams, especially when there are lots of people who are getting on board, there are lots of uncertainty. It's very nice to have lots of pair programming, lots of mob programming. In more stable teams with the clear boundaries, with the clear responsibilities of the code, it can be more efficient to have parallel work with pull requests, but of course there are downsides of all the approaches. For me, the most interesting is why people are coming and saying to my Twitter feed and saying that pull requests are not working, because in my experience they do work. They definitely work. They work most of the time. But I have also seen the cases where they can be slightly out of tune. Let me put it this way. Mike, to you, what do you think about this? What is the best way of working?
I wholeheartedly agree with the things you said, and I've also seen people say pull requests don't work, and I've seen pull requests not work, but I've also seen pull requests work very well. I personally enjoy very much if I get a lot of feedback on a pull request, validating whether what you've built fits with someone who does not share your mental model. But primarily, I think if the team does not have a shared understanding of what the desired quality of a code base is, I think then it can lead to a mismatch in expectations from pull requests, and then you get that in a team one person is always giving lots of feedback and the others are just being annoyed by that and don't give as much feedback on pull requests from that person, you know?
Okay, I understand that. So this is one of the most not psychological people factors that on the styles of the feedback, and also being able to provide a good feedback. And this is, of course, a dangerous part of the pull request, especially strongly asynchronous pull requests, is that if there is a gap between people and someone is starting to give comments, it can be very strongly misinterpreted by the originators and they can get into defensive positions. That I saw that was a problem, but that's slightly smoothened by pair programming because it's much faster and you can reiterate, you can explain what you're happening. That can happen also in many other situations, not only about pull requests, and it's about learning how to spot those situations and how to deal with them, how to manage them.
It's not just about giving feedback the right way. It's also about having a shared understanding of what good enough code is.
Okay, yeah, well, there can be, of course, dissonance. Someone wants to go fast to production and tune it afterwards. Someone wants to have all the bases covered before we roll out even to test environment. Okay, so pull requests, you can have obvious discussions and frustration, but how do you think would it be different with pair programming?
Usually with pair programming, you converge quicker to a middle ground because there is more high fidelity communication going on.
And that's also one of the techniques of managing the problems of pull requests, is to fall back to pair review, for example, and do it together with the one. So don't do it completely asynchronous, especially if you see that there are lots of potential problems, you don't get something. It can go into very long loops if the things are starting to get into a synchronous way. I just put comment, wait a couple of hours, and someone answers, he disagrees, and I answer, and so on and so on. If you spot those patterns, at that point, it's good to schedule a call. Even better if you have a team where you can just call and start talking through, and usually most of the things that you mentioned would be resolved in this way. It's not as perfect as pair programming in this case, in those scenarios, because in the pair programming you would start very early. Here already there is a kind of a solution, kind of a way of thinking that the creator of the pull request have already invested into that. So it can be a little bit difficult to tune. It's also a good technique to give a little bit more room if you have a problem, to just not to push too much into your way of thinking, guide a little bit, because it takes
move
time.
Towards a shared way of thinking.
Yes. The most important is to get the shared way of thinking.
And that's very true. And if you get in this situation where you have the combined setup of pair programming and code reviews, you almost always get the question, so if we do pair programming, do we still need code reviews?
That's a very good question. That's my problem with this approach, that we don't need pull requests, we need pair programming, because I don't think that pair programming is enough, especially for important changes. My ideal way of doing the code changes is that for some certain amount of time, like a day, used to be before we went into trunk-based development and continued delivery, a whole team has a chance to chip in into the pull requests. And the team of 5 to 7 individuals, it's not it's possible, but not always the best idea to pair program, to mob program everyone all the time, right? So even if this team is split into 2 or 3 pairs and they're working all the time together, I would still prefer to have a pull request. It can be much shorter. It can be okay, I don't see anything that strange. I don't have a problem with that.
And you're talking then about the knowledge share aspect.
The knowledge sharing, the spreading, the radiating, and so, especially in the teams that maybe still find surprises in different areas. Sometimes when things are very clear, even if you're doing pull requests, it just go through. I know that the person knows what they're doing. I know we discussed that in the grooming session. It looks that direction. I don't see any red flags. I'm not going to read any small character. Another danger with the pair programming, if the pair programming goes very well, then people are converging very well.
Yes.
And they lose the real second pair of eyes. They become a little bit of looking at that together.
Yeah, they align their mental models while they are delivering the features. And that means that they don't necessarily need to put all the context that feature requires in the code, because they both share it implicitly. And
this one, plus they also have a little bit of tunnel vision. That's
exactly.
That's normal. That's kind of natural for us as software developer. When we focus on a problem, we tunnel vision. That's why it's good to have someone looking outside of that tunnel.
I think it's normal for people, actually. But,
and if we completely eradicate the element of pull requests, there is a risk that we will lose that real second pair of eyes.
So is there a situation where pair programming is enough, that you would not require a pull request?
Now we're going back to the ideal situation. In ideal situation, with or without pull request, I prefer when in a team the pull requests are not even obligatory. They're obligatory to create, to mark that there was something, so it's possible, easy to see what was happening and to have a place for discussions. But I prefer even not to have the requirement to approve this. If a person has no doubts, if it's a small change and they don't expect anything, I would prefer them to go to production without unnecessary second pair of eyes. I prefer to foster this responsibility in people that, I think I want to show this, either because I'm doing something new way, or it's because it's important, or because I am not sure and I know that this guy knows a little bit more, or girl. To have it a little bit more proactive than just gatekeeping. If people are pair programming, it's better even than one. And if in the same model they say, it's we haven't changed much, or it was very straightforward, we will announce in some channel, or it will be automatically announced that there was a pull request. We say, but we are not expecting anyone to approve because it's low risk, we go forward. And if someone goes there, it's also good to have this culture of, we saw something in the old pull request, I have a comment, it should be still treated I think, as the first class comment on the open pull request. So there is still responsibility to follow up on this or resolve the discussion and so on. This way you kind of get this optimistic approvals. You're getting approval, you're not blocked into going to production. Well, I'm talking about going to production because this change was for me mostly required when we started to move to continuous delivery. But okay, I started to deviate a little bit and build too much of a picture.
No, but I think the two concepts are related, and I think that through your habit of pull requests, you create a easily navigable backlog of unique changes. So how is that backlog a benefit on top of what the Git history in itself already is, or your version control history itself is? So what's the advantage of going through merge requests when you're back from holiday over, for example, going through Git commits?
Well, Git commits, depending on your styles, you can have multiple Git commits per merge request. The most important is when there were discussions. So you want to pick up those discussions, and that helps. Because if there were nothing, you can just indeed go through Git commits one by one, maybe skip them and so on. But the pull request, it's a very convenient way to collect this communication. And then if there were no communication, then there was no communication. But you can also start this communication at that point.
It's not just a backlog of changes, it's a backlog of considerations about changes.
Yes.
And that indeed is particularly strong.
You just reminded me one more potential issue with pair programming only. If you're meeting completely pull requests, because pull requests, even if you're doing it for yourself, it's a little bit step ahead and look through the changes and thinking, okay, how they work together. And if you're completely meeting this step, well, for some very disciplined personalities, it might still work. I know that it will not work for me because when I'm starting to make a pull request, I'll notice, lots of to-dos, lots of things. I should have, why is even here? I was playing with something completely unrelated. Well, it depends very much on personality, but if you just apply it blindly and say, pair programming, fine, just go to master, I don't think it's a very good
You're missing
approach.
that natural point of evaluation of what is everything I changed for this story, and is this coherent, complete, consistent enough to push back to production. It's basically the self-review before you put it to review. I value that part of pull requests quite a lot myself as well. So general recommendation is pull request yes, review optional but desired, and pair as much as necessary.
Pairing is good, and there is a certain reluctance to do that often because you're getting a little bit out of the comfort zone, and it's also a bit taxing on your. Well, it's exhausting.
Yeah,
that's another reason why we don't want to really only rely on pull and pairing. So I kind of understand a little bit of this push about why PR is not working, as I can accept it as pushing in situationally a team a little bit to work together. But still, realistically, it's not. Pull requests are also one of the important tools and should be staying. So yes, pair programming, the more the better, but depends on the context. And if it's not working, then it maybe just let it work without pair programs, depending on the team and situation. Pull requests, I would prefer to always have a pull request, even if you just have a pull request and saying, okay, merge it when the build is green.
And we also have an interesting situation where we have more and more auditing requirements, and then
that's a bit annoying. That's a bit annoying to me. I also have now. I'm in a situation of a bit regulated environment, and there we are very strongly required to have always someone approving. Okay, for big changes that's not a problem, but for small change, you adjusted a log message or something, it's just a pure overhead. But okay.
Yeah,
that's again comes back to, maybe I'm slightly taking a little bit more time, but when I think on the cases where the pull requests are not working, because it's not only we touched one thing when there is a dissonance between people, or there is a cultural different way of how you give feedback and receive. But there can be also, I see the situations when people, the team is spread in different areas and they don't have capacity to review it themselves. They want to review themselves, but
the pull requests that stay open for a week.
Yes, that becomes a blocker. That's where the pair programming can work, but also what can work is raising the priority of pull requests. There are
Yes.
multiple things. What I am now working with and applied in a couple of teams that works very well is to try to work in similar areas, maybe not necessarily pair programming, even take the same story. Usually you can split it up, and it's also a very good exercise to split it up and
Yes.
work in parallel
Yeah.
on very related, because then you're getting into the same context, and then reviewing is much more easy and much more explicit. And you have also
But you are limiting your capacity to refactor and generalize among those parallel tracks.
theoretically, yes, but that's also another very important technique. You don't want to be limited by whether you're working together or not on refactoring. If I am refactoring or you're refactoring, I would like you to, if you see that it's a big refactoring, pause to have a techniques to avoid having fear of the merge request. So if I'm working on story and I have refactoring, I will not be pushing it a big refactoring. I will not be pushing in the same pull request.
Right. Yes.
Story is not one pull request. I would have
Yeah.
multiple pull requests usually, and there will be a body. There can be some follow-ups, but there can be a pre-refactoring, because I see that I'm starting to refactor. It will be huge. The refactoring itself makes sense. Everybody says yes, we want this. I will stop work on my story. I will go from master, either rebase or just from scratch, do this refactoring, push, and then rebase my changes on top of this. But of course, there can be situationally, it can be more difficult. Depends on the styles of people who are working, depends on the code style. If everything is messed with everything, it becomes a little bit difficult on the legacy code basis to do isolated refactorings. Then you might want to choose slightly different strategies. But and also you can, when you're starting to work in parallel, what the benefit is on the same feature or related features, you have a higher bandwidth of communication, and you can spot also those refactorings, and you can align on those easier than you just people are working on completely different stories.
Yeah, it's just I've seen several times that you then get co-dependencies between the different branches, and then one merges back in, and then the other.
That's what you want to avoid, and that's probably one of the problems with PRs. But that's again goes broader than PRs. It's basically trunk-based development. You don't want to have those changes in your branches. You want to push them as much as possible to master, and that means again training this technique. You spot that you are starting to deviate, to do things. Small refactoring, small changes are okay, but if you notice that it's starting to grow, it's better to stop
and push it separately to
push it separately if possible, because that would make the code review much easier. One of the big problems, if people want to question huge amounts of stuff, and then then I'm starting to ask, please split it out. That will make the review easier to go through. It will be more focused, and then you have the body of the change on top of that. Anyway, so pull requests, please. I would say always. I don't know. It's hard for me to see why not to do this technical pull request. Approvals, ideally, in my opinion, that's the responsibility of the person to get as much as possible attention and as much as needed.
Exactly. Yeah, for small changes, it can be enough to say, like, I have this pull request, I'm gonna push it to production, here's the link, look at it. If you have a problem, I think it's small enough, so therefore I push it now. And then afterwards you can still engage with the discussion.
Yes, pair and ensemble programming. Okay, with ensemble or mob programming, if the whole team is involved, it's you choose whatever you way, because basically everybody is involved. But if not the whole team involved, it's a pair of 5, 2 or 5 or 3 or 5, I think it's still important to have a pull request and basically follow the standard process, because you are at this point aligned. Maybe you are guys both experts, that's fine, then it will be just for your information.
Exactly, but then the knowledge share aspect is still very
it's more about knowledge. It's more about knowledge sharing, but maybe there are some other concerns. So you don't want to automatically say, okay, it's in pair, it's not visible, it's under the radar of the team, because pair is not the whole team.
No, exactly, and it should always based on the potential impact of the change, and not so much about who made it.
Who made it is also important. It's about reputation. If there is a pull request from someone who just joined the team, or I know that they might be bright but don't cover their bases and tend to break things, I would treat it very much differently when I know A
Yeah, but that's on a
already-
personal level, right? That's
Yes.
not on a process level.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's
Thanks a lot. Let us know what your position is on paired programming and pull requests. Have you seen one of the or the other go very well, very right, or very wrong? Leave it in the comments. And if you like it, leave a like. And if you want, subscribe to our channel because many more interesting friendly tech chats are coming up.
yes, we have a long backlog. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.